Yeah, what it do? What's going on? Everybody in internet land. This is your man Kyle Means, rocking with my guys, Gabe on the wing and in the low post, Big Steven. We got a run of Running with WARR broadcast coming with you here, giving you the best, some of the best basketball cutting takes, not necessarily hot takes. Some we get a little sizzling, but we try to keep it real. We don't necessarily, try to, give you some fake, overblown stuff. We give you the real, and definitely give you, the best in all the world of basketball, women's basketball, college, high school, whatever we touch, whatever we can touch upon, we do it. And we definitely gonna get into a little bit of summer basketball as well, with a special guest that's coming on at the bottom of the hour, Law Murray. You may know the name if you read up on the Clippers for the Athletic. Mr. Murray is the beat writer for those Clippers for the Athletic, but he also came up reporting and covering the Drew League out in LA. And he wrote a big feature last week for the Athletic on the Drew League and how it's changing and evolving over time. Already one of the most famous and historic summer runs in the country. Really a great time it looks like out there in LA. But we're gonna get into that world a little bit with him, as well as talk about those Clippers and what we can expect from them in this off season and going forward into next season. Definitely one of the more notable teams in the NBA, regardless of what they're doing. But we're also, of course, going to speak about these finals that's going on, man. We're reaching the climax, or the denouement, as they say in France. The final games of the season, the most important games of the season, down to possibly one more game, maybe two, though, depending on how you predicted it. You may be looking, maybe rooting for one, one way or the other coming up on Thursday here with Game 6. I had the Warriors going in 6, so I'm pretty fine either way. I think if I like being right, of course, but but if I'm wrong, I'm no mind that as well, because this has been a great series. It really, anybody who's looked at this series, I don't think will mind it going to 7. But you guys want to jump in already? I want, we had the, like I said, we had the Game 5. We're gonna get into some Game 5, recapping and breakdown here before we get Law on. But like I said, we're gonna continue it with him as well. But you guys, that's as good a place to start as any. What do you guys think about Monday's game? Of course, Boston, made a nice run in that third quarter. Really, sort of the opposite of what they've done in their in their 2 wins so far in this series. Really they we got something here with Gabe, maybe switching his outlook here. I think let's get Gabe on looking a little better here with this one. Okay, Gabe.
I'm here.
All right. Yeah, looks a little better there. Well, I was just setting up the, you guys for your takes on Game 5. Of course, Boston had, it was kind of a slow start, definitely a slow start for them. Slow start. Really wasn't that quick of a start for Golden State either. They ended up getting ahead, but they let Boston took back the game in the third. Really a reversal of some of what they've done in their most successful games this series, where they in games 1 and 3 they both, in both of those games, they had terrible third quarters, I should say, but great fourth quarters. This time around, they have a great third quarter, enough to get them back in the game. But, that big shot from Poole, that half-court shot at the end of the third, seemed to really mark a turning point. And, Boston just couldn't get themselves back up in the fourth quarter. A lot of bad shooting, a lot of, turnovers really across the entire game. There's some other stuff too. I'm a sort of set it up in another way as far as what was legitimate and what was illegitimate maybe in the game. But some controversy is basically what I'm getting into there. But just starting off with you guys' opinions on the game Monday and how it went down. What do you think this game? It's the all important game 5, as we always recognize in the playoffs. What were your thoughts on how this played out, and do you think that it's led us to another, essentially to the Warriors being crowned again, or is there more to be heard from with Boston?
You got it, Steven.
Well, I feel like once it became a best of 3, which is pretty much what I expected it would get to after game 4. Once it became a best of 3, I felt even more confident in my initial prediction of Golden State in 7, just because for the simple fact that I felt like they had just a little bit too much as far as being able to dictate things on both ends of the floor, whether it's the sets and where they're getting their shots from and who's getting what shots within their offense, or if it was what they're doing defensively as far as having multiple lineups with versatile front court pieces independent of Kevon Looney, things that they could do with their small ball lineups to dictate the pace and flow of things, and really the flow that Boston's action can get into offensively. So I just felt like in general, just kind of keeping this part quick, that Golden State was primed to put their stamp on things, and they executed that and then some, both at home to start the series and even more so on the road before coming back home again 5 to put another stamp on things.
Hey, Gabe, what are your thoughts, man? I know you had some issues with some of the refereeing, following you watching the game, but do you think I'm gonna bring the legit and illegitimate to you? What do you think was a legitimate issue? And no. What do you think was legitimate about Golden State's win? And what do you think was illegitimate about Boston losing?
Well, I'm not taking away any credit from Golden State when I talk about officiating. I thought it went both sides. I thought the officiating should have been better on both sides. I've never been adamant on Tony Brothers as an official. I put that out on the record. Tony Brothers and Scott Foster are the 2 worst officials in the league to me. Like with Brothers, what he did in the fourth quarter, I felt like was unacceptable. Granted, I know Marcus Smart is a award-winning flopper in this league. Even though he's a defensive player of the year, we all know that. But when Klay pushed off, and it was an obvious push off in route to that 3-point shot that he hit, for him to let that go uncalled, I had an issue with it, especially when his elbow was extended. Even though you can say Marcus flopped, I had a serious issue with that. And then I also had an issue with the call that he called on Marcus when Jordan Poole flopped, and he calls that a offensive foul, a charge. I found that to be ridiculous. But with all that said, I feel like Golden State's win was legitimate. Make no doubt about it. That was the best defensive effort that they gave last night throughout the entire series. I think they did a great job of taking away the paint from Boston when they were seeking to get into the driving lanes. However, one thing that has stood out to me throughout this entire series and throughout this entire playoffs with Boston is I've never seen a championship contender in my life have so much greatness that they exhibit on the defensive end that would make you think that, hey, this team should be the favorite in the series, yet they give up so many opportunities. Golden State has scored 103 points through 5 games off of turnovers. That is the most points through the first 5 games of a final since the 1992 Bulls scored 111 points off of turnovers against the Portland Trail Blazers, according to the Elias Sports Bureau, which is courtesy of Stats and Info. That's got to stop.
The 91 team and the 92 team were the top two.
Exactly.
Who've done that. And just not to interrupt you, but we know famously who followed those teams. Those were the Doberman teams. That was Scotty and Mike leading, playing passing lanes, disrupting, Scotty guarding Magic famously in 91, Jordan, matching up with Clyde in 92. Those were infamous defensive teams. And, for Golden State to be put in that same realm by their play is, they've done a lot. They've made the effort, definitely. But I think as well, like you say, Boston has let them off the hook too many times. And, I don't like say not pat myself on the back, but I sort of, that was part of my prediction on, you can read on our Substack. We all made our predictions before the series. And I thought that Boston, just looking at the way that they played at certain points against Milwaukee and Miami, just too inconsistent. And, regardless of what they're shooting, they still seem to kick themselves in the butt when it comes to ball handling and, bad shot selection. And, it just seems like they're not there yet in regards to, especially going against a crafty team that really never loses his head in the Golden State.
Well, and then too, it was a couple of key points when I felt like the game shifted. And it was before Jordan Poole hit that shot, at the end of the third quarter to give Golden State a 1-point lead from beyond the arc. It was when Klay Thompson hit a 3-pointer to cut a 5-point Boston lead to 2. And then Boston got it back to 4, and then Klay hit another 3 to cut the lead to within 1. I feel like those 2 3-point shots that Klay Thompson hit in the latter portion of the third quarter. I know the first one came with about I want to say 3.5 minutes left, and then the second one came with about 2.5 minutes left. Both came within a minute of one another in regulation of that third quarter. I felt like those threes helped. Those were big time shots that helped calm Golden State down a little bit when they were really, really struggling offensively and searching to find something. And those shots I felt like gave the Warriors a chance to say, you know what, we got them where we want them. We get a couple things that go our way. We're going to be fine, and we're going to get back in this game. I think what we're seeing in these finals is a matchup of youth and inexperience versus a team with championship-laden pedigree that's been there, done that. But with all of that said, I still feel like Boston has a chance. The only question is whether or not they're going to do the simple things to not beat themselves. Are you going to take care of the basketball? If you're Jason Tatum and you're Jaylen Brown, especially Jaylen Brown, are you going to stop attacking Draymond Green in isolation situations? And you're going to say, you know what, let me take the more favorable matchup, and where we're going to seek to hunt down Stephen Curry. Let's make him work just as much defensively as he is offensively, generating looks for himself from beyond the arc. You do that, then you have a chance. When I look at the game stats, they out-rebounded the Warriors by 8. Stephen Curry was 0 for 9 for 3.
Yeah.
If you'd have told me those two things were going to be true prior to the game, I'd have thought Boston would have won by plus 10 or 12 points. But they left points on the line. You lose by 10, right? But you shoot 31 or 41 from the free throw line. You make more free throws, you might have a chance late in regulation in spite of the turnovers you committed. 18 turnovers, 22 points off of the turnovers, courtesy of the Warriors. I just felt like they were exceptional last night. And shout out to Andrew Wiggins as well for stepping up.
We're gonna get in
the wasn't able to bring last night.
Right. Like I say, you mentioned what Boston didn't do. They didn't get to the line enough, and they didn't shoot well enough when they got there. They shot bad from three. I think, they sort of negated some of the size advantage that they do have. They say they out rebounded them, but I thought that Golden State played again. They played more aggressively, and they didn't seem as small compared to Boston last night. When you look at the way that Looney played, that Wiggins played, that Draymond played, they just kept things aggressive in the way that Boston just didn't answer in the right way. When like I say, Wiggins' whole game was just incredible. And Steven, I'll let you get into that, man. What did you think about the way that he stepped up, and as opposed, in regards to, in lieu of, I guess we should say, of what Stephen wasn't able to do, him not being able to make threes. He was still doing a lot of playmaking out there, but he wasn't the same guy who we've seen throughout the first 4 games of the series. But Wiggins really just put himself in another stratosphere with his performance, and really revealed a lot of himself to the whole nation in last night's game.
Well, you guys kind of circled around the point with Andrew Wiggins and talking about all of the different issues that Boston had with the offense last night. I don't feel like it's completely their fault per se. It's what they did or didn't do, and it's a lot more of what Golden State did again and dictating things. Boston kind of fell into a cycle of finding ways to attack Golden State's running defense because Golden State was giving them similar looks and a pattern of looks over and over again, to the point where, okay, Boston's like, okay, so I know when they do X, we're going to do Y. And when they do Y, we're going to do Z. Well, X, Y, and Z from Golden State turned into like an A, B, C, and an F, and a G. And it was all intertwined in like a blend of sorts. And that kept the Celtics offense at bay. It took a lot of shots that they didn't necessarily want from players that they didn't necessarily want taking those shots at times in the shot clock that they didn't want their offense to be taking shots from. So that in turn led to a lot of stagnation in their flow and just a lack of rhythm for the most part outside of that second quarter run that they made and outside of that end of the third quarter run that they made. Golden State did a great job knowing that that Boston's gonna be going after Steph Curry every chance they get. So what we're gonna do is today we're gonna start off this game. We're just gonna play it straight up. We're not gonna switch. We're just gonna play it straight up. We're not gonna show and recover with stuff. We're not gonna scram him out of things. We're not gonna try to kick him out of action. We're gonna just go straight up. First of all, they did that initially. That led to a lot of question mark type dribbling and bleeding of the shot clock from the Celtics. Then Golden State started blending in the show and recover with stuff whenever they tried to target him in action. Then they started blending in their switches. Then they started blending in the drops and having guys switch off the ball and kick stuff out of actions and scram switch them out of actions. And it all came in a blend and a flow to where they were able to dictate when Boston was taking shots. They weren't able to get the stuff as exclusively and as easily as they did in their wins. And that in turn just led to a lack of ball movement that also was exacerbated by a lot of ball turnovers from the Celtics. The one thing you can't do, and we all know you can't do against Golden State, whether you're on the road, but especially at home, turn the ball over with a lot of ball turnovers. They had, I think, nine of their 18 or however many turnovers it was, 9 of them were live ball turnovers. And I'm pretty sure Golden State scored on all but like 2 of those. So, if you're looking at the math, adding to that, on top of that, the shot selection or lack thereof from the Celtics, you start seeing all these little tree leaves of things that you can't do if you're trying to even have a puncher's chance in the end against the Warriors. And with the point being with Andrew Wiggins, he's one of the 3 main reasons why the Warriors have been able to get into the driver's seat of this series and really start dictating things, because his on-ball defense and just his overall attention to detail on the ball and off the ball is it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And when people were making all of the jokes and memes about him being an all-star, which I don't agree, I agree that he shouldn't have been an all-star, but his defense is all-world, and we're starting to see it now when the Warriors need it most. It's been him in tandem with Klay Thompson, who's refound his groove defensively, and of course with Gary Payton too and Draymond Green doing what they do best. It's been like that foursome of guys that have been taking things over defensively and blowing up the Celtics actions. Just being physical to the legal limit in terms of not drawing too many fouls against them. Just doing a great job defensively, taking those guys out of their rhythm and really covering for Steph, which Steph's been playing good defense individually himself. But just the fact that everybody's been so connected around him to the point where the Celtics are guessing what they want to do on offense, that's leading to what we're seeing now, which is Golden State taking the commanding series lead with a chance to close out in Game 6.
And to
Right,
add to
that's
your
good.
point, and to add to your point, Stephen,
Go
not
ahead.
only has he been exceptional defensively, but he's been amazing on the glass. Hauling down big time rebounds, and he's also been active off the ball offensively as a cutter, which is huge, especially when you consider Draymond's struggles and his inabilities, to get going through the first 4 games. He had a nice showing, in the first half last night prior to getting into some foul issues, but Draymond was doing the exact opposite, not moving off the ball, staying, stationary. Wiggins has been huge all year long. And I'm not going to say that he didn't deserve to be an all-star. I don't think he deserved to be a starter, but he definitely did deserve to be an all-star in my opinion, because he was showing that in that role, albeit as a third option, he was contributing to a winning team. And, they typically reward guys for that.
Yeah.
And something else he's been doing is just a real quick point, Kyle.
Hey, go ahead.
Andrew Wiggins has been doing something that no team that the Celtics have won against these playoffs have been able to do, and that's expose Al Horford in certain moments to the point where the Celtics have had to start switching up their defense. Everybody knows the discourse around Al Horford and the Celtics is that they run a lot of drop coverage and pick and roll. Yes, they do that, but at the same time, when you have somebody that can attack him in other ways, whether it's pick and roll or not, and that's what Andrew Wiggins has been doing. He's been turning Al Horford into a pressure point, which is something that no other team in the playoffs has been able to do so far. So credit to him for that. That's the big dynamic in the series.
Yeah, definitely. We got Law Murray standing by, running with WARR here, and before we bring on Law, just I'm going to bring up that statistic, or I guess the statistic package that Wiggins provided last night. According to CBS Sports on Twitter, they said Wiggins the first player since Kawhi Leonard in 2019, and only the 5th player since Elvin Hayes in 1978 to have 25 points, 12 rebounds, and no turnovers in a finals game. So that's covering 45 years. That's a crazy stat there. Just thinking about the way that he affected the game and the efficiency that's there. The 0 turnovers, I think, is very key. And it's interesting too. I think we were talking about it in our group in our little group in Twitter last night. Chris may mention this, and I noticed it too. Like you have in those early accounts, you talking about big guys. You got Elvin Hayes, you got Shaq in 2000, and Kevin Garnett in 2008. Big guys who not necessarily going to be dribbling around a lot and putting themselves in a position to turn over the ball. But the last 2 times, with Kawhi and with Wiggins, you got playmakers. You got on-ball playmakers who are doing this as well. So it just shows you, again, the versatility and the involvement of these players today and the way that they can play both inside and out. It's really impressive that you get that. And, in the case of Kawhi, he was such a powerful force in that 19 finals. Of course, led Toronto to that win over Golden State. Now Golden State gets the benefits from that sort of play as well, and putting themselves in the position to possibly knock off Boston. And we're going to talk a bit about what we can expect in Game 6 Thursday in Boston, as well as just some other stuff with our guest tonight, Law Murray from The Athletic. I hope he's available to us. All right, let's get him on. What's happening, brother?
What's going on? I'm on screen with Chicago. That's pretty damn cool. So Hope
Yes,
everything's
sir.
good with y'all.
It's pretty
Yeah, I
cool
got.
to be on with you, man.
Hey man, I got love for Chicago, man. Y'all gotta take care of my little brother. He's there, working at Northwestern. So
Okay.
finally got to visit during the NBA season, on purpose. First time I ever went to Chicago was by accident. Had a little layover there. Um, it's great to chop it up with you guys tonight.
Where did you lay over, O'Hare or Midway?
Shoot, man. The air, I don't remember the difference between the airports. I've only been there twice. I was going to say the one with all the neon lights and what was
O'Hare.
the blue line
Yeah, it's
that
O'Hare.
connects to it.
That's O'Hare for
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, the
yeah,
one that
I've been over
yeah.
there. Yeah.
I
yeah.
will say I don't want to be late trying to catch a flight at that airport, man.
No,
I
you
got
don't.
cardio in that day.
Not at
And
all.
you don't want to be late, coming from the city because you're not technically in the city when you're at
Yeah.
O'Hare. So
Right.
that's like I guess it's LAX for y'all out there. Like,
Oh, LA. We're not going to say anything nice about LAX. Look, like I said, y'all have a whole dedicated subway that stops there. And I mean, I'm from Philadelphia to begin with. So, like, my parents live around the airport. Like, that's convenient. There's nothing convenient about LAX. Okay. Like, the only way you have those two terms in the same statement is to discuss inconvenience. So,
yeah,
like I said, Chicago does it right. From my perspective, I've only been there a couple times. I'll always reserve the right to revisit this statement, but for right now, we cool.
you got a good reading so far, man. We appreciate the love, man. If you need any help with your little bro, man, just let us know. We can, get in contact with him and hold him down if he ever needs anything. But Law, man, what you doing, with the athletic, man. You've been doing your thing. Like I say, you're originally from Philly, but you went to school out in LA, right?
Well, I went to college in Western Pennsylvania, school that has changed its name at least once by now, so I'm not even gonna get into that. It's called California, Pennsylvania, but again, y'all can look that one up. I got my master's from USC
Okay,
a
yeah.
few years after that. So, I mean, I've been in LA for this is going to be my 13th summer. I don't know how I've been here this long either, but I'm blessed. So it's worked out. It hasn't always worked out, but it's working out right now. So I've been a part of this community for most of my adult life now.
It's not a bad place to settle, I would think, but we're gonna talk a little bit later about your coverage of the Drew League and everything out there, but of course you cover the Clippers, so you cover the league day in and day out. You cover, covering the Clippers, you cover the same division as one of the teams in the finals now, and of course being Golden State. Just give us some, if you want to start, give us your overall thoughts on how this series has played out. And, coming into the series, what was your sort of outlook? What did you think that, the Warriors were bound to be in a position to win this series, or did you think, that Boston had their number possibly?
Well, I will preface this by saying when I make any level of predictions, I mean, I ain't no damn weatherman. I am not a meteorologist. It's not my
Mm.
specialty. That being said, if I make a pick, I'm not changing it. This ain't the damn stock market or the odds betters and nothing like that. You know what I'm saying?
It
Don't
ain't
take my
that
stuff to the
serious.
bank. But if I say it the first time, I'm gonna leave it there. And I said Warriors in 7 when it started, but I can also say I thought the Celtics would take a 3-2 lead as part of that Warriors in 7, and you see what it is right now. So this is a series that I did feel like was going to be extremely competitive, even though the margins of the final scores have all been double digits and through 5 games. I mean, going into game 5, the Golden State had one more point than Boston through those first 4 games, and then obviously you saw Game 5 was decided by 10 points, but uh, Boston fell down early. And they showed poise at a time that they hadn't played well through this entire series, the third quarter. And you're thinking, okay, Boston's going to they're going to steal this game. And then Golden State had a finishing kick that the Celtics did not have. And if you're the Celtics, you're disappointed because the way they played in Game 4 and in Game 5, they had opportunities to win both of those games, possibly, probably not in the series, but at least be leading the series still. This is the first time in the NBA Finals going into this Game 6 facing elimination that they've trailed at any point of this series against the Warriors. That's significant. And so now with their backs against the wall, we've obviously seen Boston win elimination games already. You know, they were down 3-2 already against the Milwaukee Bucks. You saw what happened there. They had to go on the road first and tie that series to force a Game 7 before they came home for their Game 7, hit the most threes you've ever seen a team make in a Game 7 in NBA history, and then advance to the conference finals. And against Miami, they had a chance to close things out at home in a Game 6, and Jimmy Butler had us all going back to the LeBron in 2012, right? And then the Celtics, they survived that Game 7 in Miami. That was tough because, I mean, let's just be real. Like, you got to go on the road, a different situation than the semifinals. Semifinals, they're like, we ain't ducking no smoke. We earned this to host a Game 7. They show that they can win a Game 7 wherever. They've showed that they can win facing elimination wherever. They've already swept a team that in the preseason people thought that, you know, like that were championship favorites in the Brooklyn Nets. They beat the defending champions from last year, and they beat the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference already this year. This is their biggest challenge, obviously. You know, you're going home. That's your only safe haven. But the last time you were there, you decided to take a bunch of threes in the fourth quarter, and you smoked it. So I feel like the series is going mostly according to how I thought it would. These are the best 2 defenses in the NBA, and it absolutely looks like it because they make basketball look very difficult when you're watching these games. And I'm interested to see what's going to happen in Game 6. It can go either way, obviously.
What's what person or element of this series, again, whatever facet of this series has stuck out the most to you? What do you think has been the difference in the series so far?
Yo, this is going to sound crazy because people, got all kinds of stuff to say about this man, but I feel like Draymond Green is the biggest variable in the series for both teams. Obviously, he gets the Celtics hype and in their feelings about certain things, and they were attacking him in some games. But I really feel like Draymond has been here's the thing about Draymond that everyone has to pay attention to. The Warriors spent the regular season throwing the ball away more than almost every team in the single league. That's the biggest reason why, if you look at their regular season profile, the Golden State Warriors had what we consider an average offense, 16th in efficiency. They've obviously been way better than that. Part of that is the personnel. Like, you didn't see Steph, Dre, and Clay play together in the regular season really for any meaningful stretch. That's really been their entire playoffs, those 3 guys, in addition to the guys that they've had in Andrew Wiggins, Jordan Poole, etc. But Draymond is a guy who, when he's at his worst offensively, you're not worrying about the shooting and scoring with him. They got guys to do that. But Draymond is basically their point guard. The way that he facilitates their offense, his decision-making plays a big role in certain guys getting their shots. We talk all the time about Draymond Green and Stephen Curry having like a telekinesis up to them because of how long they played together, because they know how to finish each other's sentences in basketball terms. You know what I mean? What's not happening in this finals is that Draymond's not turning the ball over. He's still dropping dimes. He's still finding Curry on back cuts, on handoffs, what have you. He's still able to run his pick and roll. He's still able to get the ball in the short roll, drop it off the loon, what have you. But he's not costing Golden State in terms of turning the ball over. Golden State's offense has been incredibly consistent. Whereas on the other end, Boston's won 2 games in this series. The first game came because they hit a bunch of threes, and Game 3, when they went to Boston for that part of the series, they went to the paint repeatedly. In the other 3 games, and really even in Game 1 and Game 3, they didn't play completely clean games, but when they played their best, they've been They've looked better than the Warriors have looked to me as a team at any point in this series. But Boston's turnovers have cost them. They've cost them early, often, and late. And Golden State has not turned the ball over as much. And that was really the biggest key from game 5. And I think Draymond has been the biggest part of that.
It seems a lot of the main, agenda points are really right there. We know how what's Boston looks like when they're at their strongest, and we know what they look like when they're at their weakest. Essentially, they like I say they want to keep better hold of the ball. They want to, they want to force more effort out of Golden State than they did in game. Definitely want to defensively than they did in game 5. What I'll give let all you guys touch on this. What specifically do you think that Boston has to do aside from let its crowd get buck wild and nasty and take advantage of their home court however they can there? On the court specifically, what do you think is going to be the key for Boston to be able to take control of game 6 and keep it in their hands so that they can force that game 7?
Playing with pace, but at the same time knowing when to slow down. I think a lot of times what Boston has allowed Golden State to do too many times, and credit to Golden State's defense, but they've sped them up. And as a result, you see a lot of erratic drives like you saw last night to the rim that Jaylen Brown had, where he was being indecisive, not knowing whether or not to pass or kick it out to a shooter or to take it up, driving left or right. I think that's got to change. I think another thing is they got to start going back to Marcus Smart and some post-up actions. I think in game 3, as you alluded to, Law, they did do a great job in that game of attacking the paint, and they got some scoring chances and opportunities, which paid significant dividends for them. And that was one thing they did do in game 3, where they posted Marcus Smart up more. They also posted him up a couple of times in the second quarter when they had a big-time run. I think they got to go back to that, pick and choose their spots, and most importantly, getting off to a good start and not settling for just any shot, trying to get the best shot possible against these Golden State defense. I think if they could do that and stay connected defensively and, not drop as much with Horford and whatnot and Time Lord and Robert Williams, doing what he does, being an impactful guy inside and out defensively, I think they have a shot.
Steve, what about you, man?
Well, before Law came on, I talked about how the Warriors have been dictating terms more frequently than not this series defensively. I feel like a lot of that comes from indecision stemming into a sustained thing that's coming on possession-by-possession basis from the Celtics offense. So they need to get back to their identity of generating a little bit of ball movement before flowing into dribble drives or a post-up or a skip pass or a reverse. Again, like I said before, Law came on, they lost their like paper trail, like their typical aim and target offensively, trying to hunt out that mismatch, trying to hunt out that matchup with Steph Curry. And as I mentioned with the Warriors, with them switching their coverages with him, keeping them guessing, that's in turn bleeding out the clock so consistently that they're taking shots under duress. So if they can get back to their plan of attack, get back to what their bread and butter is offensively and moving the ball, getting into their DHO actions and kicking the ball and reversing it from there, that's going to generate movement from the Warriors defense, which is then going to open up the lanes for second drives and third drives and passes to guys who are out of position, who their help man is out of position. And that's going to in turn lead to open looks, and it's also going to allow for their role players to get back into the flow of things, which is another entity that was missing in game 5. If they can get their role players back into it, which they typically are, as history would suggest at home, they can definitely give themselves that puncher's chance in the end. But it's not until the main players, get back to dictating things offensively and getting the ball where it needs to be without turning the ball over.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Steve. I was going to say right quick, there's the expectation of the role players to play better at home. That's sort of a continual storyline in every playoffs. But you know, I don't know, man. I think do you think that it's going to depend more? That a winning effort for Boston will depend more on getting, you know, like Derek White or Grant Williams or people like that, you know, producing, or is it going to be more on the Jays to provide, you know, in particular, Tatum to truly provide an efficient, effective game where he's, you know, scoring, you know, pretty much, if not at will, but close to it, and not having to make so much effort to get those points that he's been getting this series.
See, I was going back up Steven's point because it was
Go
a
ahead,
great one about
go.
the role players. No, because the way you teed it up though, Kyle, it's like it's the finals, man. You can't be led by role players in the damn finals. You know what I'm saying? Like big shot Bob stuff comes in games 4 or 5, and maybe you face an elimination. Those role players can't save you. You need the starters to set the tone, and you need your stars to define the game. And look, man, I saw Jason Tatum take the ball to the bench during the timeout in the fourth quarter, and that was the only time my man was strong with the ball the whole game. It seemed like you need to do that to begin the game, you know, and then when guys like Derek White, Grant Williams, Peyton Pritchard come in the game, they need to be decisive. Okay, Derek White he went from the 2020s version of Fred VanVleet, you know, having us be inspired by having a kid right before the finals and balling out and everything, to going back into a shell, and he can't have a game like he had in game 5 where he doesn't make a single basket. He even before that, Derek's had he's been a bit of a liability because of his decision making. He's actually shot the 3 ball well, but he shoots the ball like a player who's not used to shooting the ball well. He's got to be decisive. If it's there, shoot the shot. If it's not there, drive with purpose. He hasn't done that. Peyton Pritchard, he got a chance in game 5. He belongs in this series. We saw that in game 1. The opening minutes of that fourth quarter when they were down, he was on the floor with Derek White. He was part of those guys hitting threes. He belongs. Like Peyton Pritchard can hoop, but he didn't shoot the ball like a dude who could hoop in game 5 in the first half, and Ime never went back to him in the second half. He's going to get another chance, but he's got to come ready. His job is to shoot the ball and be decisive with his ability to shoot the ball and space the floor. And my man needs to know where to. Maybe he'll be helped out by being back in the Garden, because if this man steps on the baseline one more time catching a pass, I'm gonna flip out. So he needs to
be where your surroundings, man.
I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
especially you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, come on, man. You can't. You're literally living in the corner. You know, that's your home. No, you know where you're at on the floor. And then there's Grant Williams. I see this dude Grant Williams flop way too often, and he's playing like a player who's been reading his clippings a little bit. You know, I think Grant will settle down. I'm sure some of those guys got in his ear. He needs to play like the player that we saw hit all them threes in that game 7 against the Bucks. He needs to play like the guy who, look, man, the draft is next Thursday, and a whole bunch of 6'6", 250-pound dudes are being inspired by Grant Williams being an effective player this deep into the playoffs. He needs to get back to that instead of the player who is trying to literally do too much on either end of the floor, get caught up in the Draymond Green stuff. It ain't working for him. He's just go back, play his game. They need those guys to be effective, but it starts with the tone that is set by the leaders of the team, by the stars of the team, and that is Tatum, that's Jaylen Brown, that's Marcus Smart, and it's also Al Horford, who, when Al Horford has played well in this series, the Celtics have won. When Al Horford comes in looking like his age, looking like the dude that got put on paid leave by the Oklahoma City Thunder this time last year, by the dude who had a sabbatical in Philadelphia, and Al's sister's still mad about that, John. He hasn't. That's when Golden State's won. They need Al to come through with his biggest game in a week, tomorrow or Thursday night.
You notice he gave us the John too. We getting authentic Philly here, man.
Oh yeah, man.
And to add to your point, like when you talk about Derek White and how he needs to be more decisive, One play that stood out to me last night, he had a wide open three, and he pump faked, and then he took it. It was like, you've been shooting well the whole series. Take the shot, and it was a wide open look. You're not gonna get too many of those being a role player, and you got to make them pay when they leave you. So I agree with you on that. Those guys definitely got to be ready to shoot, as well as Grant Williams, a guy who Milwaukee was daring to beat them. And he did just that in Game 7 with his ability to knock down 3-point shots from beyond the arc off of driving kicks and catch and shoot situations.
Yeah, and that's the type of stuff we see it every year. Every championship team has those guys, those 7th, 8th guys off the bench who make some sort of signature performance to help them through, whether it's in the early rounds or maybe even in the late in the finals, But I want to see, like I said, I want to see Tatum really show. He's been trying to unearth Kobe or speak to his ghost or whatever. Man, you got to do more than what you're doing if you're trying to evoke that man right there. And if you're going to get a championship, that's something that you got to really speak to instead of just like say, really be about it and not just speak about it. That's what I should say. But
yeah.
Hey man, somebody said that Kobe would have left that ball on red.
Yeah, I'm sure.
God bless Kobe so though.
Yes, indeed. But right quick,
one more thing.
Go ahead, Steve.
And then one more quick thing about the Celtics and their role players. So where they found a lot of success in Game 5, and really where they found a lot of success at the tail end of that series, that mirror series against the Miami Heat and that defense, was when they started using Marcus Smart more frequently as a screener, because that in turn brings his man into the play as a screener, and that's typically who Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum like to attack as far as getting switches or getting downhill. So if they bring those guys into it, whether it's a single screen or a double drag, whether it's Marcus Smart or Derek White, that in turn is going to allow them to naturally bring who they want into all the actions, which is Stephen Curry. So that's just another way for them to continue to attack him and to kind of like weigh on him as far as his stamina for the whole 48 minutes of the game. So just those little things that got them to where they are now, they need to kind of get back to that and stop, which I think they'll address with a film session more than anything, but just those little subtle things, which is it'll just help them kind of realign themselves with their identity offensively.
Just throw out your original predictions or whatever. Each one of y'all, what do you think is going to happen Thursday? Do you think we get a Game 7?
I do.
Okay.
I do. Because I just feel like this has been an evenly matched series, and if Boston goes out losing 3 straight games, I'm gonna tell you right now, it's gonna be a cold summer in Boston. And the Red Sox can't even save them from that. I don't care how they get the American League East. It's gonna be a cold summer in Boston because you cannot blow championship opportunities when you have them in front of you. And you're going to have a lot of people say, well, they're a young franchise, they're on the rise. But we're talking about a team that's been to the Eastern Conference Finals, I want to say, like 3 out of the last 5 years. You finally get to the dance. You're playing your best basketball. Al Horford ain't getting no younger. You know what I'm saying? Granted, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are stars in their own right, but it's still some questions as to whether or not they can fit. Now, I think they answered those questions in these playoffs, but when you go home without the gold ball, it leaves a lot on Brad Stevens' plate to try and figure out, how do I improve this roster going into the next season? I've been around situations like this. It kind of reminds me of the Houston Rockets in 17-18. A lot of people thought when they lost in Game 7 to the Warriors, we'll be back around. That's not always the case. It's not always the case.
Law, what you think? We see in Game 7?
Well, I told you it was going to be Game 7, so you already know. I'm not throwing that out because you made a demand. Come on, Kyle. but just just to piggyback off of what Gabe said, I actually feel like this particular team is a year early. Like these Bulls was under 500 in January. In
Yeah.
January, like RJ Barrett hit that shot that I still don't understand how the physics of a left-handed man on the right side of the court hit a game winner like that. But they did it. They did it. And I believed in them because they had a first year coach who told those dudes that stuff that Brad felt by the end of his run he wasn't capable of communicating to anymore. This is a team that won one playoff game last year, and people forget Jaylen Brown wasn't available for that playoff series against the Nets last year. I'm so impressed by the progress that they made, and at the same time, we're talking about rotations, right? There's 8 guys, and 2 of those guys, well, one of those guys, Peyton Pritchard, was a third striker. He was behind Dennis Schroeder and behind Josh Richardson, in addition to the starters. He's their 8th guy. It's clear that that team has another step to take as far as both roster building, as well as being on the same page as their head coach from the beginning of the season. That clearly wasn't the case this year. So I'm so impressed that team had enough growth to get to this point. But also to back up what Gabe said, man, NBA cemetery is littered with coffins of teams that thought they were going to be back and they never made it back. You talked about the 2018 Rockets. I can think of the 2012 Oklahoma City Thunder. Them Bulls had 3 MVPs that hadn't even won MVPs yet in the finals, and they never got back there, right? And those are just 2 examples. That's the Western Conference. We still talk about, obviously you got a bunch of old heads getting on TV, Stephen A. Smith, who get upset anytime the Knicks do anything. But back when the Knicks were worth talking about, what were we talking about? We talking about a 90s Knicks team that a lot of people gravitated towards. They made the finals in 94, lost a game 7, had a 3-2 lead, lost a game 7. And the only time they ever got back there was the lockout year. They were the 8th seed. Even though they got there, they weren't fully healthy, right? And they lost to the next dynasty that we didn't know about.
Well,
You don't want to take it for
the
granted.
whole East in the '90s, and you can extend that to Indiana, to Jersey in the early 2000s, and there's in Indiana again. There's been a lot of teams like that.
Yeah, to make it a short point, it's a lot easier to win a championship when you 2 wins away than when you have to look back in an off season where you didn't and have to climb that mountain again. Only this time you got a whole bunch of teams in that conference who they're not. I don't know if anyone was underestimating Boston before. No one in the East is that good to be overlooking anybody. And to be honest with you, it's deep. That was a deep conference for the first time in several years. But let's just be real. You're not going into Boston being like, oh, they got some young, they got some decent young talent. Now it's going to be like, oh, these dudes were the Eastern Conference champions with a 2-1 lead in the finals. But I think Boston's going to win and force a game 7, and then when they lose the championship, it's going to be littered with the kind of regret that we're talking about right now.
We're gonna get into some law specific stuff, but Steven, give me your take right quick. Do we see a game 7?
I think we do. Much like Law, I'm sticking to my prediction. I figured they would be in this predicament where Golden State would be up 3-2 coming into game 6 at the at the new Garden, and I think the Celtics are going to handle their business in front of their home crowd and force a game 7, and then I think Golden State is going to take it. If we look at something Doc Rivers talked about when he was coaching the Clippers in the CP3 era, where he talked about how luck has a negative connotation in terms of teams' successes and a consistent and sustained variety in the postseason. It's not necessarily a negative thing because when you look at it, teams have injuries. If you find a team that doesn't have injuries that can last in that war of attrition throughout a rigorous playoff run, that's typically going to be the team that makes it to the finals. Miami had a lot of injuries in their main rotation. This is not to discredit the Celtics at all, but just kind of to support the claim that they need to seize the moment. Miami had injuries. Chris Middleton was out, of course, and the Nets were never themselves for pretty much the entire season. So, they lay out the law of the land in terms of how they got to where they are. They seized the moment with each opportunity, and they need to cash in on the returns from that one more time. Will they do it? I don't think so, but I wouldn't be opposed to seeing it. But my final prediction was Golden State in 7, and I'm going to stick to that at the moment.
Well, again, I had Golden State in 6. So if I'm gonna be right, let me be right. If not, at least we'll have a game 7 in the finals, which is always pretty cool. But like I said, let's we get towards the end of the show, but we definitely got some Law Murray specific stuff I want to get into before we go off. And first we got to take it back to Philly via our guy Sean Terry, who says he's heading to Philly this weekend. And I know you got an opinion on this, Law. Where can the brother go to get a 5 cheesesteak? I'm guessing you have your preference in that regard.
I actually don't, because my parents can cook, so like I can't
Okay.
really hook you up on. Yeah, I can't really hook you up on that regard. But I would say Jim's on South Street. That's always cool. So, but it's Philly, man. Enjoy yourself. I'm not really the type to tell people what to do when they get to my city. So, I'll just say enjoy yourself and don't do anything crazy.
Definitely.
Crazy enough in Philly.
You hear him, Sean. You hear him, Sean. But being your Philly guy, we got to get your opinion on the Philly team, the 76ers, man. Like, what's up with that franchise, man? What's the outlook for them right now, man?
Well, I actually stepped out of my. I don't want to say out of bounds or anything. Shout out to The Athletic. I get to do more than just cover the team that I'm on the beat for, which is the Clippers. But the 76ers, not even because I'm from Philly, just because I study basketball, they made the playoffs 5th year in a row. Cool. That's like this is not the process anymore as far as the tanking part of it. But they have failed to make the conference finals in any of those 5 years. And I actually was studying this when I was covering the Clippers before I got to ESPN back in 2016, when the Clippers made the playoffs 5 years in a row, but none of those 5 years included a trip to the conference finals. So I look back through every time in NBA history there was an instance of teams that made the playoffs 5 years in a row and failed to make the conference finals for a stretch of at least 5 years. What happened to those teams? I called it playoff purgatory. And I wrote a whole story on it. It's not that complicated, but conversationally, the long story short, or the TLDR, is you're not winning a championship before you have to dip out the playoffs and back into the lottery for at least a year first. So, long story short, Philly is at a crossroads. It's one that Doc Rivers is very familiar with because obviously he was coaching the Clippers back in 2016. That Clippers team came back the next year, had the Jazz in the first round in 2017, lost, and then they traded Chris immediately, extended Blake, but eventually traded Blake, and that was the last year of DeAndre Jordan. The whole era ended, right? They did a great job in handling that transition of eras, but it was the era ended regardless. Ironically, that Jazz team was the first of now 6 straight years that they made the playoffs and failed to make the conference finals as well. So you have 2 teams, and one in each conference, that are at this crossroads of they've been good for a while, but they have not broken through to the contender status that is usually marked by getting to a conference finals at least once in a 5-year period while you're in the playoffs. So we all know what the deal is with Philly. What's going to happen with Harden? What's his next contract looking like for a guy who is still real good, but not MVP level like he was? That Harden's gone. I think Joel Embiid was pretty blunt about that fact. And with the Jazz, we were talking about Brad Stevens, talking about this NBA Finals, talking about why it was important that Ime Udoka was a different kind of voice, and now Brad is running the front office. Well, now the Jazz have a similar situation because Quinn Snyder literally just quit and said there was nothing. The only reason he's leaving You know, it's not like he got pushed out. It's not like he hates these zoos. He literally was just like, they need a new voice, and I'm not that guy. And so he's going to chill out for a year and enjoy himself. And so you got one team in the West who really good team for a while. Now they're looking for a new coach. And then you got one team in the East, one of the most fascinating decisions as far as a contract that we're probably going to get all offseason.
Well, you cover daily a pretty fascinating team as well. And, we definitely got to get your thoughts on the Clippers. And, I'm thinking in setting this up, I'm going back to the game that they played here in Chicago late in the season, the regular season. They just got Paul George back. I think it was the second game that he played back from off the injury. And when you here for that game, Law?
I was. It was dope.
Yeah, it was a real good game.
Maybe not for the Clippers, but it was great. It was great for me.
Yeah. It was a game. That was a game that really, at the time, gave Chicago people a lot of, encouragement about, because it was the first game that in a while that the Bulls played where they looked like something against pretty much a playoff team. I mean, the thing with the Clippers, of course, is that you had the excuse all year of not having Kawhi and not having PG for most of the year. You get PG late, and then the whole thing is about, well, maybe you could wrap it up through the play-in into the playoffs. It doesn't really happen. Not much comes of that, of course, but you still have the outlook now available to you where you have both of them likely coming back in full strength next fall, and you can go from there. But just give your thoughts on the Clippers as they stand right now. What is this offseason going to look like for them? Is there going to be a lot of restructuring? Is there, if it's even possible, of the roster, or are they just going to be like, let's strap up with our guys again, our big two, and see how far we can go?
Well, first, as a very quick aside, I'm a huge DeMar DeRozan fan, and that might have been the best game he ever played in his whole life. And I got to catch up with DeMar briefly on the way out. So to your point about how galvanized and that might have been for the Bulls, even in the short term, he just told me it was like desperation. Like they played desperate basketball that night. They were down. They had no business winning that game. But what happened was the Clippers ran out of gas. It was a foreshadowing because that was actually the last regular season game that the Clippers lost. It was the only time they lost since Paul came back. The very next night, a bunch of dudes sat and they put 150 on the Bucks.
Yes, they did. Yeah.
Okay, so
Robert Covington.
Yep, I was on that trip too. I had some chicken wings across the street. Took a quick nap. Woke up and saw Robert Covington go all the way off. Now let me tell you something. That's relevant to what we're going to talk about with the Clippers all season, because there ain't nothing to talk about the Clippers all season. Like they signed Rocco last month and kept him off the market, and that might end up being the biggest move that they make. They basically made their move mid-season. You discussed they knew Kawhi's situation going into the year, and then Paul tore his elbow right before Christmas, and they still had the togetherness, the toughness, and just the flexibility to get themselves a 42-40 record. They should have made the playoffs. They did not. They weren't successful in the play-in, just like the Golden State Warriors a year ago. So you obviously know, you can use that as a launching pad to do a bigger thing the following year. And with that in mind,
is that I'm sorry, I gotta go in right on that, because that's interesting to me right there.
Yeah,
Golden State provides such an obvious blueprint now for teams who maybe have to fall back a little bit. And I don't know, is that any? You obviously said it yourself, but is that something that you may have gleaned from the team itself, or anybody, or the fan base at all? That okay, maybe we could be the next Golden State.
Respect to anyone who's a Clipper fan, but I don't really try and be listening to the fans that much.
Y'all be listening to Clipper Dale and them?
I understand.
Hell no, man. Like, come on. I'm around the team on the regular. I listen. Look, I hear, but it's you gotta take everything with a grain of salt. You know what I'm saying? Some of the fans they do a great job with what they're observing, but I got to do my part, right? So I don't want people thinking that.
But just from talking to the team though, or from from the guys themselves, is there a feeling from them that they could possibly really turn it up again next year?
I mean, you got to remember this team made the conference finals in 2021. We're not talking about, I mean, Golden State, when they made the play-in, they had to bounce back from being the literal worst team in the NBA for a year, and then they should have made the playoffs. And, obviously they lost the 8th spot to a Grizzlies team that they would obviously avenge that this year. The Clippers are coming from a place of their chemistry and togetherness is at an incredibly good place right now. That's one of the main reasons this is going to be set up as a quiet off season. Sure, there's going to be some trade chatter. Like, they're a responsible organization, which means just because you're not the one sending the call, you still going to pick up the phone when you get one, and you're going to do your due diligence. That's how they messed around and got Norman Powell and Robert Covington in the middle of the season after nobody had any thought that Robert was. I don't know about Cove. He was in a contract year, but Powell signed a new contract with a team that traded for him just months earlier. Who thought Norman Powell, when this past season started, was a trade candidate? But that's what's the difference is between the offseason and the midseason. In the offseason, I'll tell you what, whoever wins this championship, the happiest teams in the league are going to be the 28 teams that didn't lose the NBA Finals, because they're going to be like, we had no losses. Let's go with this optimism. Vibes are going to be good everywhere, even with the Lakers. The Lakers got themselves a new head coach. Russ showed up to the press conference. Yep, we good. You know what I'm saying? Everybody thinks that they can do something in June, July, and August. They ain't get hit in the mouth yet. And so that's what happened with Portland. Portland went from being a team that always makes the playoffs, new head coach, to a team that all of a sudden, oh shit, we got a general manager who we got to get him out the paint real quick. And it turns out our whole lineup needs to get put on ice because we're not going to be very good this year, and we need a tank. And oh shoot, we got to pay Ant Simons. Norm Powell makes a lot of money. Let's get off that deal right now. Let's get off the CJ, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You don't have that in the all season, but in the midseason, teams start, their season starts going sideways and they start becoming sellers out of nowhere. And so the Clippers, the reason why this off season is going to be relatively quiet, or at least it's set up to, is because they've already made their moves. When they made the conference finals, everyone was tripping about Kawhi's contract, what's going to happen, what surgery did he get, you know what I'm saying? Is he talking to these dudes still? Is he no, there's no drama like that. Everybody the Clippers wanted back last year, they got back. And it's going to be the same thing here. Even less drama because you don't have guys like Kawhi Leonard up for new contracts. It's more like Isaiah Hartenstein and Amir Coffey and what's going to happen with Nico Batum and Ivica Zubac and their respective options. And they don't have a lottery pick. They cool with that. They got a full roster anyway. You know who their lottery pick is? Paul George and Kawhi Leonard coming back. There's a whole bunch of silver linings involved with the Clippers not having a deep playoff run, which is what they had the previous 2 years. Now you got an older group of guys who are going to get their rest, who know who they're going to, not just they know where they're going to be, but they know who they're going to be playing with for the most part. Even though a lot of those guys had to miss significant time, they were together. They were on flights. They were in practice, rehab sessions, coaches, meetings, whatever you want to call it. Guys have really developed a camaraderie with the Clippers, and that really enables them and puts them in a position where when the next season starts, there's a lot of built-in trust that some teams are going to have to take months to develop. And the Clippers are going to have to get going again, too. A bunch of these dudes, Kawhi is going to have 15 months between his last game, which is exactly a year ago today, and when he makes his return from injury, which we're going to all celebrate if we not haters. And that's going to be, look, basketball is hard. Basketball is hard. Like some Bulls, they get on the park and they'd be like, "Hey man, I ain't playing 2 weeks," and you'd be like, "All right, I guess that's a good excuse." So we gotta have some empathy for dudes who wind up taking a year or more off, right? But that's where the Clippers are at when it comes to the draft, when it comes to free agency, potential trades. They're not looking to do a whole heck of a lot because they feel great about the team that they have, and they have reason to feel great about it.
And that's a really good position to be in when you think about it, because so much of the NBA, and this it could be the case for winning teams and mediocre teams and flat out bad teams. So much of the NBA is based on this sort of frenzy that can occur at any time when you're talking about the rosters and stars, retaining stars, and trying to get other stars to come into your franchise and whatnot. You can look at teams like Atlanta, or who was trying to, full of talent, but trying to figure out how they're going to maintain, how they're going to reestablish that talent next year, or organize their roster. Or you could look at the Bulls, where such an encouraging season we had this year, but we still got to worry about Zach LaVine for the next month, and where his mind is at. It's a hectic thing that's involved when we talk about it. Just about the situation of any NBA team. There's very few teams that are in a position like you say, Law, with the Clippers, where you going into an offseason like, look, we got our squad, and we pretty much just gonna work around the edges. And but as far as our stars go, we know who we got, and we ready to go. When
I know y'all happy about Garpax not being in anymore.
Yeah,
making these decisions.
Yeah, we just thank heaven that we don't have him and Gar and my man Jim Boylan anymore. That's all.
Shout out to the leadership committee.
There was some down years, man. Because
we had some bad years. Yes.
I had to refuse tickets, and shout out to my man Bob Rosenberg, who been doing the scores table work since the inception of the franchise. Man, sometimes he'd be like, "You want to go to Sunday?" I'm like, "No, And I remember seeing some games when they were playing against elite level contenders. I would go every once in a while, and they was getting knocked out by like 30 plus, fans leaving early third quarter, early fourth quarter. Man, that was a nasty time. That boiler area was nasty.
That'd be the only reason to go is who they're playing against. But
exactly,
now they got it back to where you actually want to see the Bulls again. So we have that going for us. But Law. If you guys got any questions, right quick, we're gonna get to the Drew League stuff and then wrap it up. But Gabe and Steve, you got any questions for Law, right quick?
I mean, I know you was talking about Law with the Clippers, not really having to do too much in the off season. But a lot of talk has been with the Clippers, like with they're deep on the wing. There's with Zubac, if they are able to re-sign him, they got some size up front with Hardenstein. I thought he came around. I'm familiar with him, covering him in his early days with the Rockets off of Fansided. What's your take on their point guard situation, and who do you think they could get at a serviceable cost? I know a lot of people think John Wall, but from a salary standpoint, unless he's willing to give up some bread, we know that that's not going to work. So, like, what's a veteran or a serviceable point guard that you think they could get in the building over there?
I'm not even. Let's put it this way. I filed a story today that'll be up tomorrow, and y'all gonna get back to me on that one.
Okay, cool.
But you'll see what I mean. But long story short, the Clippers they're not looking at the point guard's position like that anymore. They're really not. I think though, now that because you mentioned it and not me, John Wall is an interesting player if he winds up opting in to that 47 million, right? And then getting bought out, because what sane person opts out of 47 million when you only played one out of the last basically 4 years? And so, I know John Wall got a lot of respect from the guys on the Clippers, even though I don't think he's ever really played with those guys on the floor. Obviously, a lot of dudes know John Wall, and John Wall would be an intriguing kind of fit, but he's not a player that, like, when I say the Clippers roster is full, it is really, really full. Like, they are happy with the guys they have, and there's not a lot of roster spots. So they're just not looking. And let me just explain very briefly why they're not looking for a point guard. Because y'all remember they had Lou Williams and traded him for Rajon Rondo, and everyone's like, oh, look, they fixed the point guard situation. And we all saw that wasn't really it, right? And then last year, they basically had no point guard outside of Reggie and Eric Bledsoe, and then they trade Eric. Uh, the Clippers are going to have the ball in Kawhi and PG's hands as much as possible. And they just added another dude who needs the ball in Norman Powell. So when you think about that and you think about, okay, what are we looking at as traditional point guards? You know, transition, pick and roll, penetrate and drive and kicks. Okay, they got big wings who can do that. And they got some other guys who on a secondary level can do that in the pinch. Obviously, Reggie was overtaxed. We saw way too much Reggie Jackson last year, but he had to, because the other dudes who could cook, as Ty Lue would say, weren't there. But Reggie's going to slide back into a much more comfortable role. Those big wings, they're going to be on the floor. And even when one of them are off, Norman Powell's going to be there. Terrence Mann he did an outstanding job continuing to develop his game. And Jason Preston was a rookie that they targeted. Think about the way we look at point guards. A lot of these dudes are, water bug types, smaller, stronger, big guards, whatever. Preston is a pass first guy. A lot of point guards now are not pass first guys. We're not looking at the 90s anymore. You know what I'm saying? Hand check era point guards where you had to pass the ball. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, but you got a guy in Preston who they targeted and said that the only guy who they thought was a better passer in that entire draft class was Josh Giddey, which is high praise if you've seen Josh Giddey pass the rock. And Josh Giddey is a big guard too. And so they're looking forward to what he can do. If that dude can play legitimate NBA minutes next fall, then we ain't talking about bringing in a veteran to take minutes away from certain guys. So when that's kind of the view when it comes to point guard. It's complicated. Dudes would love to see that classic point guard play, but let's bring it back to the Boston Celtics again. A team built off of two big wings, just like the Clippers, right? They got Marcus Smart, who is annoying as hell as a point guard because that dude, you would not trust that dude with your baby, But at the same time, didn't we see the Celtics with Kemba Walker? Didn't we see the Celtics with Kyrie Irving, with Isaiah Thomas? Didn't Marcus Smart start his career playing with Rondo? Where did that get them? Where are they at right now? And that's all I'm going to say about that.
That's a good point. I forgot about Preston too, out of Ohio. Yeah, they did get him last year in the second round, and I was wondering what they were doing with him. I know he was recovering, from knee injury or whatnot. I think he got a little run to G League. Yeah, I'm interested.
He didn't play. He didn't play at all. He didn't play in the G. He had foot surgery because
that's right.
of bad luck. He got hurt less than a week before camp. He had surgery a week into camp, and they put him on ice. But I saw him work out in that practice facility for months. I can't, and I'm excited for him. He's someone that I've gotten, I've gotten to see work for his whole rookie year. I thought they would let him debut, but they decided not to, which means that he's eligible for all the rookie awards next year. So if you want to look at him as another rookie, that's just the thing. It's like, oh, you don't have a lottery pick. You're only picking once in the second round, but you also got a dude who he didn't get to play. He didn't get to debut. He's going to get the debut next year. We're going to treat him like a rookie next year. And that's sometimes you got to flip your thinking and your perspective on it. And that's how you build a team. And that's how you build a depth chart.
Another potential ace in the hole for the Clippers. But I was about to throw it to Steve. Steve jumped off. I don't know hopefully we'll get him back on. But yeah, Law, definitely before we go, I want to get you to talk about the Drew League. And that was one of the things that, I've been eyeing you to come on the show for a while anyway. But, I saw that you came out with the feature last week in The Athletic about the Drew League. Just for those who don't know, I think if you watch this show, you're probably into basketball enough to know. But I'm putting the link up in our chat now. Really just an amazing, summer league pro-am, in LA, historic, goes back decades. Pretty much everyone who's everyone in LA has played there professionally. People, of course, the wealth of people who've come up through LA, grew up in LA and played there is amazing. And I like the way you started the feature, man, where you had the Kevon Looney talking about the last time that he scored 20 points prior to doing it in the Western Conference Finals this year. He mentioned college probably, but he said Drew League definitely, and he said to count that. He definitely for him it made it meant a lot that he was able to get off in Drew League, and just sort of give you actually have covered the league for a while. Like I said, you've been out in LA for a long time. You saw in your bio on the you on Athletic, it said you wrote for a Drew League website, drewleague.org. Give us your history, from your perspective of the Drew, and what it means to you and what it's meant to basketball in Southern California.
Well, shoot, I'm gonna just start with the Drew, starting in 1973. And it's called the Drew because the games were played at Charles Drew Middle School in South Central LA. Eventually, the leagues migrated to Washington Park in the early part of the century, and then about 10 years ago, they moved to King Drew High School. And last year, the last 2 years were very different years, obviously. 2020 was the pandemic. Nobody was playing. 2021, last year, they started on Juneteenth. It was a comeback year, but they had to play the games in Bosco because I don't know if people realize we're still in a pandemic, and accommodations had to be made to adjust for that. Like, LAUSD wasn't having anybody use facilities last year. So they had to play games kind of on the east, like way east of where they normally play. So this summer is a big deal because it's back at the site that they're supposed to be at. For people who are concerned about sponsorships, like it was a Nike league for a while, and now it's Adidas is the primary sponsor. So the look and feel that is something that is different. There are streaming games this year. That's stuff that all that was covered in the article. And in a couple weeks, so not this weekend, but I believe the following weekend, there's actually going to be a pro-am tournament where the Drew and 5 other cities, New York, Philly, Baltimore, Atlanta, Miami, they're all going to come to LA at the Drew, and they're going to have a tournament. And that's going to be something that we have never really seen, and that's going to be cool. This feels like the formal comeback of summer pro-am basketball, whereas last year was the accommodation, kind of like the NBA season. We got an NBA season last year that was littered with all kinds of protocols and accommodations just to get through the damn year, right? So that's what it's reflected with summer basketball. As far as like what it means to me, I mean, again, I should have been down there way before 2014. I had a few summers in LA before that, but I either didn't know about the league or I had other stuff going on. Finally, like I was about to wrap up my master's degree from USC. I had one more thing to do as far as an internship, had a credit left, and I decided to try and get on and cover the Drew as a part of my internship. And it's really been a start of a great extension of my relationship with basketball in general. I mean, I love to play still. I need to get healthy, but I love to play still, and like I appreciate all levels of players. Basketball, like I said, it's hard, and the ones who do it at the highest level, you gotta respect them. But also the ones who do it below the game, and that's what it is at the Drew. I mean, dudes is coming in there playing hard. You come in there unprepared, all lackadaisical, and you're going to get embarrassed in real time. I remember last summer, Chandler Horton Tucker, he came to the Drew Chicago product, so I know y'all familiar with him.
I was
And
saying, yeah, that's what Chicago do.
yeah, I mean, my man, I feel bad for him. I hope he come back because he didn't acquit himself well last year, and he got called out. He got called out last year. He got called out last weekend when I was there. He said, "Hey, Taylor was the truck of the year," and I'm like, "Oh man!" And I put a video up, showing how he was just playing and not doing all that hot and catching all kinds of heat from the announcer, the PA announcer George, and people was coming at me being like, "Why you put this out on Taylor Horton Tucker? Don't you cover the Clippers?" And that's why I tell y'all I don't trip about the fans because they don't know what they don't know sometimes, man. So,
Wait,
the Drew,
right, quick.
yeah,
Does that happen
yeah.
often? Like people think you have an agenda, an anti-Lakers agenda. That
I-
with things.
If it's cool if I have an anti-Lakers agenda, which I don't, by the way. The Lakers do it to themselves. But again, I don't. The worst is if the team that you covering and people think that you supposed to be a fan of the team, or the
Yeah,
flip side, they think that that you hating on the team. If I'm telling the truth and I got facts, receipts, and all levels of consistency, then you can say what you want. I'm gonna be fair and not fair and balanced in the Fox News way either. I know what
yeah.
I respect. Yeah, I respect what we do as journalists too much. I respect what we have as covering these athletes too much, and there's stakeholders beyond that, the community beyond that. I ain't gonna mess around, but I'm gonna have fun. It's basketball, so
No.
I'm gonna have fun. I'm gonna be respectful, and if I got something to say, I'm probably saying it for a reason.
You mentioned playing. Have you actually played in the Drew in the
I
actual
have
league?
played in the Drew. I have played in the Drew. I played against Shemezi Matu and Benny Boatwright, and that was not fun. I only played because the team that they were playing against wasn't going to have enough players to get into, to have a game. And a forfeit is
Wow.
beyond the fact that it's a loss. It's a horrible look. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, yo, it's a Sunday morning. I'm dressed to play because I'm a hooper and that's what I do. You know what I'm saying? This boy done hooping church shoes and Timberlands. Like, give me some sneakers and I'm gonna be ready to roll, right? And so, I didn't score. I airballed a three. I'm gonna let y'all know. Like, I played like a Sunday morning, but I grabbed some rebounds and didn't completely embarrass myself. But that was a highly athletic team. We talking about some pros, and yeah, they got clown. They got clown. It wasn't even a bad team. I think they were around 500 when they were like, "Yo, we ain't got." I'm up here doing the tweets. Then I go to the locker room, get in uniform. Like, all right, I guess I gotta play. And then by the end of the game, I'm back running the Twitter account for the Drew League like nothing happened.
That's
I
the
think that
pro
was
end.
2020. Yeah, I think that was 2015. You know what I'm saying? So I've been in the mix. There was another time where I didn't get in the game, but I got in uniform to help another team from not forfeiting. Again, we all in the gym. Games are flowing. 5 game schedules this year, but they used to be up to like 7, 8 game schedules before. Don't nobody want to have a forfeit. Okay. So I'm like, yo, give me a uniform. A couple guys coming late off from LAX airport that we've already established what it is there, right? I understand
Right.
it. And enough guys got there where I didn't have to play. But what they did was they took a picture of me for player of that game. By the way, because I helped them get that game started on time, they won the game and wound up making the playoffs. And then they took a picture of me for that player of the game with 0 points, 0 rebounds, 0 assists. And I'm like, all right, I can take the joke, but people need to know I didn't get into that game. If I get into a game, I'm at least getting a steal, and not the Jose Alvarado steal either. I'm gonna move my feet and I'm gonna let you get the ball up. So, but
So you come
but
away with
yeah, man,
something if you play it for real. I
absolutely,
You got
yeah,
to.
man. We ain't, yeah, we getting something in the box score. That's how I always play it.
but who was? I got two questions. First, who was the pro player who you've been most impressed with seeing live at the Drew, and who is the non-pro player who really defines what the Drew is, in your opinion?
Well, that's tough, man. That's tough. The pro player who shows up and is a cheat code, and I'm looking forward to seeing him. Ironically, is actually James Harden. When James Harden
Yeah.
comes to the Drew, James is a problem. But I haven't seen James on that stage in a few years, and James is an Adidas athlete, so he is like, and obviously he's from LA. He is
And this would seem
extremely
to be a
exciting.
year. Not to interrupt, but this would be a scene to be, like in the past, players of Durant in New York, and some players have utilized summer moments to prove something or refurbish themselves and so on. That might be the case this year. It might have to be the case this year for Harden.
Oh yeah,
Coming off
James could use some good vibes. He hasn't had that in a few years, so like, I'm fascinated to see what he's going to look like this summer. There's like a single-digit % chance that he not play at the Drew sometime. So, in the past when he's played, he can't. He looks like one of the best players ever, because he is one of the best players ever, top 75 of all time, right? So I gotta put him on that level. As far as that's tough to define, because pro ain't just NBA. You got
Sure.
overseas
Well,
guys.
Let me restate it then. Just a player we wouldn't know, obviously.
Well, I think people know Franklin said by now, and
Big
Frank
three
Nitty, but y'all ain't know Frank Nitty 5 years ago, and
That's
like
true.
before he played in the big three, before he got regular overseas opportunities, that kind of thing, he put the time in at the Drew. Like 5 years ago, we were talking about how he was selling phones with Verizon, and now he has a whole different life, comfortably paid through basketball and through. I mean, he was always a great athlete. He played at Weber State with Damian Lillard, and Dame would talk Frank up like he was a special athlete. Obviously, Frank just didn't have all his stuff together in terms of being. Sometimes guys hit their maturity at different levels. Frank's came later. Frank is an amazing dude. Like, I love not just the progress he's made as a basketball player, but just as a person and as a presence, because he knows eyeballs are on him and he just enjoys it. So, I guess now though, you got to start thinking about the next generation, like guys who have a whole lot more ahead of them, guys in their 20s. Who would that be? And man, that's tough. The reigning MVP of the Drew is Pat Rembert, but Pat, I think he's on the other side of 32, and that's a good one. I might have to come back. I might have to come back to that one and let the summer marinate. I mean, technically, the summer hasn't even started yet, But like we established before, I ain't a meteorologist, so I'm not going to be beholden to that fact.
How long do they have do the games extend for? Because I'm actually going to be in LA in late July. Will they still be playing games then?
Oh yeah, the playoffs don't start until August, so there's going to be regular season games until the first weekend in August, and then that first weekend it works like the NBA playoffs. Actually, this is the smallest group of teams that I can ever remember the Drew League having while I've covered it. Obviously, the league started with 6 teams, so we're not talking about the olden days. You know what I'm saying? But as far as the modern era of the Drew, I mean, when I first started covering, there were 28 teams. I think last summer there were, I want to say 22 teams. Now it's down to 20, but 8 teams in both divisions are going to make the playoffs still, and they're still going to have the first round, second round, the division champions who make it to the championship game, and that's going to take 2 weekends, and it's going to be great. So July is going to be popping. Like, I was hanging out there. I saw all 20 teams play, and I got to chill. I got to relax. You know what I'm saying? Ain't going to be no chilling and relaxing come July when dudes start playing with a chip on their shoulder. So I'm very eager to see.
Holler at you, man. Like the last weekend of July, I should be out there. So,
hey man, I hope I'll be there. Hope the Clippers don't make that trade that I said they won't be making.
I've been dying to get out to LA to check out the Drew League. I've been a big time fan of the Drew League since I've been in college, and I agree with you. Like I've watched a lot of Harden tapes, like and mixtapes and stuff, especially covering the Rockets when from fan side from like 18 to 20. And man, he put on a lot of big time shows out there, and that's what really made me pay attention to like the off season grind of a lot of these players.
Yeah, do you think that the Drew is the because it seemed like the the Rucker and all that East Coast stuff has sort of died down a little bit in recent years, but the Drew was kept going, and as you wrote in your piece, they're actively doing more to keep themselves relevant, like with the streaming and all that. Does it seem to be like a concerted effort for the Drew to sort of be a defining summer basketball event, not only in Cali, but maybe across the whole country?
I think honestly, man, I don't think the Drew needs to try to do that. It's LA for one, it's basketball for two, um, and just like everyone wants to be at the Drew at some point of their basketball like relevance. And the thing about the East Coast, you mentioned Rucker. I mean, look, that's an iconic place. Like the Drew League has gone to Rucker Park. You know what I'm saying? So
Mm.
that's why I'm excited for this program thing at the end of the month. Like whoever
The
winds up winning
multiple
the thing is
cities,
going to
yeah.
have like their bragging rights. But there's a reason the Drew's hosting it. You know what I mean? Like so, the Drew League is worldwide. Like there are people overseas who are very familiar with the Drew who not just have athletes who play there, but like they got scouts coming out to the Drew League to watch how some of these dudes get down. Everybody's trying to find, their a new player. The Adam Sandler movie Hustle that just came out,
Mm.
that's gonna have us calling Juan Hernan Gomez Bo Cruz for the foreseeable future. Like this is actually, that was a really well done movie. And when you kind of understand the culture of basketball that goes beyond the top line of how we're evaluating prospects and how we find these dudes. It's like, yeah, man, like don't think that scouts have to turn over a lot of stones, man. Like they hear some dudes killing it on the streets or somewhere or in a program or whatever. Yeah, some of these dudes are not above coming and check you out. And that's what happens at the Drew. Frank Session is the most blatant example. It just happens, man. So, um, yeah. Look, George, my guy George, gets on the mic and often talks about how LA has snatched the title of the Mecca of basketball from New York, and that's not. I don't have a real claim in that. People from LA hate people from LA when it comes to basketball, but let's just be real. It's a big state. They should be good. So I'm gonna just leave it at. I'll say that too. But like this is a place where a lot of dudes want to be at. And show off one time. I just saw Cade Cunningham and Hamidou Diallo chilling. Like those dudes weren't playing, but they were just chilling, watching the Drew. And it's only week 2. There's not a whole lot talked about this early in the Drew League summer. But Adidas and why this is relevant from the brand's perspective, they're going to make a push to get their guys, since it's the first year of that partnership, they're going to make a push to get their guys seen and have a push in that regard. So,
have you heard anything about Trae Young possibly coming back? I know he's an Adidas guy, and he came and he lit it on fire the first time. I remember they made a big time deal out of that.
Oh yeah, I expect Trae to show up. Remember, Atlanta's going to be one of those cities in the program, so I don't know who's going to. There's a difference between showing up and being seen and coming through and playing.
Right.
I don't know. I can't, and it's not my job to promise anything anyway. I'm not here to promote
I understand.
But that being said, I'm probably going to see Trae at some point this summer. Trae enjoyed himself. That's the big thing. Like Trae enjoyed coming out and playing. Like he got to play on Baron Davis's team, which wasn't even good that summer, but he had a great time. Giannis Antetokounmpo, he came out to watch, and it was a big thing because it's like, oh snap, it's Giannis. He's watching the Drew. Nothing else, but just watching the Drew. And this dude Giannis gets excited when he has a popsicle. Imagine him having the Drew age. So that's how it was when it was really. I mean, it's always been fun, but like this summer is going to be a different energy just because of the latter stages of the pandemic that we're in, and obviously we were in a much more critical phase of the pandemic in the previous 2 summers.
Yeah. It seemed like it's just like a perfect place for so many guys to get together because it seemed like all you hear about in the off season anyway is guys going out to LA to train and
Right.
get together in one way or another. So to have that Drew League right there, whether a guy just want to come and watch ball or get involved themselves, seems to be a natural thing there. And you talk about the Mecca of ball right quick. I got before we wrap up, we stake our claim too in Chicago, and
No, man.
I
Remember, I covered Patrick Beverly, so
yeah,
naturally
yeah.
we hear about it. And now I cover Robert Covington, another Illinois guy. So
yeah,
Mhm.
But it's a lot of it's an interesting thing too because I think Gabe, you remember going back to like late last year, we've been talking on this show a lot about people coming from other parts of the country, in particular Chicago area, to go to Southern California to play like for prep schools and everything. Of course, Amari Bailey famously has done that, and there's been other kids, but
JJ Taylor.
JJ Taylor, yeah. So right quick, I don't know if you've observed that in any way, on the lower levels, on the prep levels and everything, Law, but, has that been like a thing in Southern Cali about, getting, being a draw for other players, from rising players from other areas of the country, and, how has that sort of affected things? And I guess it's probably made it more popping in a lot of ways.
You bring up those guys, and I cover Brandon Boston, who's from Atlanta area, rookie with the Clippers, and you know he's from Norcross, but he played his senior year at Sierra Canyon. Who owns
Mm-hmm.
Sierra Canyon. The early 2010s Miami Heat and their
Right, yeah.
offspring.
All the kids there, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, man. You talk about popping. Like, I've never been there, but I know that I got to plan my day if I would ever go there. Like, you go to that game, it ain't like going to what my games were in high school. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Like, you got Drake at them games.
Right.
Like,
Yes.
yeah. So, but here's the thing, man. Because we in a different era of prep school and preparing. Like, honestly, the United States has, an opportunity. Well, not an opportunity, but like, um, you got some great talent overseas, and what happens with those guys are they are groomed to be in basketball academies or the equivalent of them from an early age. So like you're getting a similar thing here. Like, Kanye West had the Don the Prep or Don the Academy or something like that. One of my
Yep.
good friends, um, Frank Robinson, who won a championship at the Drew League, hit a clutch 3-pointer in front of Kobe Bryant to win the 2013 title. And I spent my first summer chronicling something that I had never even seen, but everybody heard of, right? He coached that team. He coached that Don the Prep Academy team. And he's not going to coach them going forward. But that's because Frank's got such a portfolio of things to do as a trainer of not just young talent, but also of talent that is preparing to go into the league. And now he's got this academy that his facility that he's been working on for years. Like, Frank Robinson is a basketball. That's the great thing about the Drew. You hear about guys who have a big role in the community of basketball or the conversation of basketball or where basketball is going, that if you just watch NBA games, or you know how a lot of NBA folk are, they don't even watch the game. They just hit on Twitter and
Right.
react to whatever, is on
They see.
TV that next morning, right?
Right.
But like, if that's all you get from the league, you're missing a ton. But if you are embedded in the game in a different way, you just know a lot more people, right? And so, you know, that's the evolution of this country. You got overtime elite, you got G League Ignite, you got kids who have different options, more expanded options. You got kids going back to college now for longer periods of time because of NIL, right? I know that's beyond what we're talking about here with prep school and California and LA in particular, but uh, that's the thing though. The benefit of all of us is we came up a certain type of way. And if you're open hearted and open minded, you understand that you have your perspective and your experience, but you also know that we saw some changes when we was coming up. And damn it, there's more changes happening right now, and there's going to be more changes. You can't ever, be so set in your ways that you're blind to what's happening with these kids and what their opportunities are. But you do, if everyone ever comes up to you and wants some perspective or wants some guidance, it's great when they come to you, they come to us. Like, we're paying attention. We talk to a bunch of people. We're listening to a bunch of people. The basketball community is expanding, and I think we all got to be aware of that.
Yeah, basketball is an industry, and you mentioned community. At the heart of it, there is that sense of community, but it is an industry. I think, in my mind, and I think, for most of us like-minded people, we just want to curb the exploitation that's involved. We want to minimize that. And, as long as kids are having opportunities to succeed and, get theirs and have a way they want to do it and really get paid along the way, in an equitable fashion, I'm good with whatever, So definitely, I agree with you on all that, man. But change is happening. And I think, like you said, in our coming of age, we probably pretty much saw the proliferation of the AAU scene and all that, and now it's just evolving into something else, and and they'll keep on evolving, and we'll see how it goes. But like I say, long as kids are getting the opportunities and we're seeing people perform at the highest level that they can, like I said, I'm good with it.
It's funny you bring that up because I just was listening to a Knuckleheads podcast episode with Kenyon Martin. He was talking about his journey coming up from Dallas, going to Cincinnati, and then to the New Jersey Nets in the NBA, where he became an all-star. He was talking about how he didn't know anything about AAU until he went to ABCD camp and pulled up on Kobe and them. He said didn't even know who Kobe was until Kobe had a bunch of cameras following him around on the campus where the ABCD camp was. And he was talking about how he went to ABCD on a Greyhound bus with Sonny Vaccaro, had paid for his flight back home after finding out about it. He said, I had to basically play my way back into a flight ticket, me and my friend who was on a Greyhound bus. And then on that same journey, I learned about AAU and I started playing on an AAU team around my area. As long, but when they was transporting me, he said, but I didn't find out about this till like 2 years into high school.
What's crazy about Kenyon Martin is his journey to the NBA. Now he's got a kid, Kenyon Martin Jr. Like, could not be that. It's the most opposite entry into the league I've ever seen. Kenyon obviously came up how he came up. You mentioned Gabe being in Dallas and then going to Cincinnati for 4 years. He's the last 4-year senior to be the number one pick in the NBA draft in 2000. Kenyon Martin Jr., he went to, I think, I want to say one of these schools in Southern California.
He went to Sierra King.
Yeah.
Oh, he did? Oh, okay.
Yeah, he went to Sierra King eventually, but he started at Chaminade. He started at Chaminade. And then instead of going to college, he does that 5th-year prep year at IMG down there in Florida. Okay. And he gets drafted from there, but not the number one pick like his dad. 20 years later, one of the last picks in the draft by the Houston Rockets. And, and obviously Kenyon got bounced. Both Kenyons got bounced, but the bounce is different. You know what I'm saying? Ty Lue is kind of making fun of Kmart Sr. a little bit, saying, Junior can shoot the ball in a way that Kmart, the original Kmart,
Yeah, he
couldn't
can.
quite. And you know what? I saw King Martin Jr. He played at the Drew too. He
Mhm.
and who was he running with? Brandon Jennings, tough crowd. Sharif O'Neal was on that team. I was watching those. Actually, that's who Giannis came to see because Giannis played with Brandon in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Connections, man. Like, and again, Giannis ain't come up in Greece with the Drew League, bro.
Right.
Yeah, you gonna see some things in that Disney flick. I ain't seen it yet, but I probably might someday. You ain't gonna see the Drew League. So Giannis enjoyed that for sure. That Brandon Jennings, by the way, I wish he never tore his damn Achilles because they were calling that dude Black Jesus before.
Oh man, it
My
that
first
was
summer
a time.
covering,
Yeah,
yeah,
First time
I
I
was I
seen
Brandon
was
Jennings,
I
man.
was in Wisconsin. I was in Wisconsin working up there when he first got on with the Bucks, and that
Yeah,
I remember that game. I was it was his third game when he scored 50
against Steph.
on Golden
his
State.
I
Yeah.
think it's seventh. Yeah,
It was
So it
early in
was
his
real,
rookie year.
real.
yeah.
Yeah, but that was they. You would have swore that, like I said, he was Jesus of North Milwaukee at that point. Like he was going to change things, but he had he shined bright for a second, but what is he really up to at this point?
I mean, shoot, Brandon Jennings is hella connected. So even though he's not an NBA player anymore, Brandon in a lot of conversations, a lot of SoCal, LA Hoopers are. I mean, my guy Black Trey was he actually. I think Black Trey first came to fame because of his connection with Brandon, and now probably people probably follow Black Trey like because of what Black Trey gets to do. My guy Trayvon Edwards is dope. But I mentioned Tough Crowd. That's Brandon Jennings' brand. So like he's got the clothing brand and everything. Brandon is active. Let's just put it that way.
That's what's up. There's a lot of ways to get it nowadays. Business, all type of business ventures, and investments, and like you say, acting. People acting now and putting out podcasts and while they playing and everything. So, we got competition too, I guess, but it's all good though. It's that's just the game. It's a lot out here for everybody, and man, Law, man, I typically don't let the show run this long, man, but I enjoyed talking to you, man, and having you on, man. You were great, as great as I could imagine, and definitely, man, we want to have you back, as soon as possible, man.
Hey, I appreciate it, Kyle. Like I said, it's always good to have a conversation about this game. Like we privileged in a lot of ways to get to enjoy this and spread that good vibe as much as we can while we got the time to enjoy ourselves, right?
Yeah, definitely, man, and that's hopefully we'll see a lot of cool stuff this summer. You out there in LA, and here in Chicago, we're gonna be on the lookout for a lot of stuff too. But again, like I said, your work is on the Athletic, but let people know exactly how to follow you and follow your work and everything.
Yeah, as always, shout out to the Athletic for putting me on, and I'm at Law Murray the New on most social media. Not that TikTok joint yet. I need another year. But Twitter, IG, I'm on there.
Definitely. Gabe, of course, rocks with us every week on here, and definitely follow Gabe, for continuous, talk and analyzation of the game, and all sorts of other things as well. I know you could talk about the Sox too. Sox actually got they playing a sorry team again, so they got a couple wins.
I had the game on in the background a little bit. I
Yeah.
was watching a little bit. I see they won 5-1. Yeah,
Yeah, so the offense is picking up a little bit, but I'm still worried about some things with the Southsiders, but we keeping on. But Steve, I don't know what's up with Steve's connection, but definitely keep up with stay true S.3 there, as you see in the bottom corner. He's doing all sorts of writing. He's been covering, covered basketball from all angles, covering the finals, covers the Chicago, covers WNBA as a whole, but Chicago Sky here in Chicago. We're gonna get back to them probably on next week's show. Talk some Sky and everything with him and Chris. Hopefully we get Chris back on. But we just doing it, man. Keeping on through the finals. I guess with our next show, we'll be wrapping up the final series. And we'll, like I say, have our takes on how that played out, and who will be our new champion in the league, and definitely we'll get into some draft stuff too. Bulls are involved in there with the 18th pick, but also a lot of intrigue and everything still to be had in the first round in the lottery and all that. So we're gonna get back into that next week as well. But in the meantime, follow WARR Media. We get that back up. Follow us on anchor.fm for a podcast version of this broadcast. You will get that soon on anchor.fm. Of course, with YouTube, you can always be in touch with when we go live. You'll get the live notifications and all that. So follow us on YouTube, follow us on our social media, Twitter, IG, and Facebook, and just keep rocking with us. Keep supporting us. Support people who mess with us like Law Murray. And in the meantime, stay cool out there. It was like it was a do the right thing type day here in Chicago today. So it's gonna be the same tomorrow. Stay cool out there, and in the meantime, keep bouncing. We'll holler at y'all next week.